When she goes into her inner world, she doesn't need to refer to any sense of her physical being at all. She can just go straight into what she's feeling emotionally. She said, well, this is different to what you're always teaching, Nigel, because you're always teaching to access that inner world through our feeling of physical connection and interaction with our physical environment. We are not the source of life. The bigger system around us is what channels life through us. So we better be surrendering and plugging into that wider system if we want to be sustained. So that is what I teach. It's all very physically based. We have a physically based existence. This brings up a connection between the physical, the emotional, definitely the spiritual, and the mental. All those different layers of our consciousness, they are all interconnected. Now, we can absolutely access the inner world just by thinking of an experience, having a thought, having a picture in our mind, by asking the 2AI question. We don't need to always be referring to our bodies to access our inner world. But when we do access the inner world via our emotions or via our imagination, we will absolutely be affecting the body chemistry and all of that. So there will be always a physical connection to everything that we think and feel. Now, why I don't approach life's journey from so much of a emotional point of view is because our culture has pulled out that physical component a lot. Our religions have pulled it out. Our philosophies have pulled it out. So that we live with this expectation that if we want to further ourselves spiritually, mentally, emotionally, that we somehow don't need the physical component. And there's this view that the physical body is just this clapped-out old vehicle that's necessary for bumping us around in the physical world while we're still here, which is, in my experience, the total opposite of what the physical body is. And if we do that, I think it's very difficult to fulfill the mission that we took on when we came into the earth plane. To fulfill the mission, we must understand the nature, the why of why we came into the physical plane, because otherwise we might as well have not come. We might as well have just stayed with some kind of an energy body, feeling emotions, having thoughts, having imaginations, but not coming into a physical body. So when Source throws out aspects of itself out into the great unknown, those aspects of itself start to spin, as we've talked about many times before. And when they spin themselves into dense, compact spirals, they produce the material world out of atoms and so forth. And everything in the world is generated by cycles. Everything in the world of emotion and thought is generated by cycles too. You could say that the physical dimension is generated by tighter, more powerfully binding cycles than the less dense emotional and mental cycles. But the whole idea is that spirit, to be cast into its fullness, needs the total opposite to its nature to counterbalance position itself. And we find that counter position taken up by matter, by dense matter. The denser the better. It's like concrete. You hit the concrete when life stops you in its tracks. It's like hitting concrete. And so spirit is attracted to matter. It's yin and yang. They counter position each other. So there's a super dynamic relationship between them, which is only halved in dynamic if you're just going between spirit and emotion, spirit and thought, because thought and emotion are much closer to spirit than matter is. So there's not such a dynamic relationship where spirit can really lever itself off something that is really much more counter-positioned to itself. Now, we're only taking a couple of angles so far why the body is so important. The cultural aspect of, the body is pulled out and that spirit needs a counter position. There's many more reasons why the body really needs to be thought of as foundational. When we think of babies being born, their whole emotional and mental world is built upon physical sensations. In my view, I'd be very willing to think that through a bit further. But right at the beginning of when my life started to see the light, so to speak, it was very much sparked by a realization to me that if I wanted to change my thinking and my emotional outlook on life, it had to start with my body. So it was a case of, if you want to feel mentally and emotionally better, Nige, get yourself physically feeling better. Do you feel comfortable? Do you feel nurtured? Do you feel healthy in your physical body? And what are the things that make you feel safe, comfortable, loved, healthy, vital, stimulated in the physical world? What are those things? Those roots of where your spirit develops out from. Because think of it this way. People who go to therapy for like year after year, decade after decade, and they never get properly down into the roots of what they're struggling with, they're not going back early enough. To get back early enough, you have to get back into the physical body. There's no way around it. You have to get back to those early experiences of physicality. Physicality includes how you were touched, or if you were even touched, and when you were touched, how you were touched. Like, were you breastfed, bottle fed? Were you treated lovingly when you were doing that? Were you, toilet training? Was that rough? Were you made to feel ashamed and so forth? When you were fed, did you feel nurtured when you were fed, or did you feel like nobody gave a shit about you or resented you when you were fed? So these physical things of, eating, sleeping comfortably or not, literally, pooing and weeing, toileting, were these comfortable physical experiences or not? Were your physical interactions of play and exploring the physical world, were these things comfortable and stimulating in a way that produced emotions that went on to guide you and open up, things of value in your life? Or did they give you emotions that made life very difficult for you as you went through life? And the thing is, lying on the psychiatrist's couch, just talking about emotions and thoughts and imaginations are not going to get you back in the past enough and grounded into the physical experiences that produce the emotions enough. You may say, oh, well, that's rubbish, because I went back in my mind and I could feel the physicality of it. totally get that. But the challenge there would be, what if you actually let people actually physically give you physical experiences that were different? Try doing the physical reenactment, not just the emotional, because from my point of view, that will go far deeper. That will get to the root of these things. It will complete the full circuit, the full circle, the whole picture. And this is why, if we pull out the physical as being important in our, spiritual, whatever, emotional, mental endeavors, we weaken and we pitifully shrink boundaries of what we can experience in terms of fullness of life. At the end of our lives, we can look back and maybe go, yes, so I wrote some good poems and I had some good feelings, but that isn't living life. It's like Mike Tyson saying everybody can have plans, and I would add, anybody can have the most wonderful ideas and plans that just make them feel so brilliant. And then Mike Tyson says, yeah, everybody has plans until they get punched in the face. So this is my point. Mike just sums it up in that one point, that all of that deep emotional work is going to go just totally out the window until we figure out the physical dimension, until we figure out what leads us to getting punched in the face, and until we figure out maybe how to take a punch in the face, and until we figure out how to take a punch in the face and still be able to absorb affection and not be traumatized by that, so we can't feel physical affection. So these are the deepest challenges because they're the most primal, they're the most primary ones. And of course, people can avoid all of that. They can go to spiritual groups. They can say, I don't like to think about the body because it's not spiritual and it's just a vehicle for us until we can pass back into the spirit, which is just pathetic, because you're throwing away the very grounds for being here on the earth. You're saying, in effect, I'm not interested in being here. I'm not interested in the mission. I want to avoid. I want to do a workaround, please. And the culture will cheer and reward you if you do that as well. That's exactly what the institutions and culture of today would love you to do, because you're weaker for it. You are more controllable and indoctrinated if you do not get that sense of physical grounding and knowing of why you are here on earth. You are totally manipulatable, totally controllable. You have not fulfilled your mission. So to pull everything together here, yes, we can access our inner world, no problem, just by doing questions like the 2AI question and basically just closing our eyes and dropping inward. Nothing wrong with that. It's brilliant. But we, at times, need to drop into our bodies and become very sensory, because that puts us in touch with that fetal stages, probably. I'm not sure on that, but certainly the early infancy stages of our life, which are so important, because if we neglect them, if we can't access that inner infant and that inner child, we don't have the wisdoms that they give us, but we don't have the open door that an inner child has, or an inner infant. We don't have that. We close it down, because these are where our most instinctive intuitions come from. They come from those raw early years. We just cut that right out. And if we just live in our adult state, we can get really worked up and tense. But if you go back to holding a baby or holding an animal, which is a little bit like a baby because animals live totally physically too, just like babies do. If you hold a baby for a while, chances are you'll calm right down, or you hold an animal. You'll calm right down because for animals and babies, their needs are so primary. They just want to feel physically warm and comfortable. They want to be fed, and they want to either have a peaceful atmosphere around them, or they want to play. If they're a bit older, they want to play. Their needs are very primal and very basic. And so if we can drop into that state, when the whole world is going crazy, if we can drop back into that state, we cease to be going crazy anymore. Because we can appreciate, I'm still breathing, I've just had something to eat, I'm warm, I have dry clothes on, I feel fine. I'm all curious and wondering what mischief I can get up to. So being able to access the inner child is very strengthening, and it reminds us of what is really, truly important about life. If we lose that inner child through losing our physicality and that losing of importance of the body, which to me is a sign of trauma, which most people are in. They don't want to feel their body for very good reason, because life has not been good physically to them. They haven't had cuddles and affirming physical experiences, and they haven't been able to find them. So they give up, and naturally, of course, you would want to switch off that part of your system because it's too painful to go there. And so you lose that inner child and you get lost. You get into these feelings of, I don't know where I came from anymore. Literally, I do not know where I came from anymore. I cannot feel my body, therefore I do not know where I came from. And this is the story of so many spiritual people. They may talk about the body, mind, spirit, body, or whatever, but they don't really have much of a clue of the primacy, the primal, foundational grounding of the spirit in matter. Matter is mother. You forget your body and you've forgotten your mother. You are motherless. And if you're motherless, your inner child cannot exist. If your mother perishes, if your mother is not on your radar, your child is banished with your mother. And it's very sad and it's very tragic, and it's kind of, in a way, for some cases, very arrogant. People thinking they're above their body. It's so hypocritical, because when people drop their inhibitions, they do tend to be more physical. When they do start to feel those child emotions come up, they usually start to get more physical. And we know that, it's said from so many different sources, one being in the Bible, you can't enter the kingdom of heaven without becoming like a little child. And children are very, very, very physical. They live in a physical world. They're always exploring physically. This is what they need to develop in order to survive. And their intuitions and their emotions and their mental mapping all comes from their senses, feeding them information directly from the physical world. That's how we mentally map things. And that's how we generate cause-effect emotions. If this thing happens, I feel good. If that thing happens, I feel bad. So I should look for these things that make me feel good. So we learn about cause and effect through the physical world, on physical emotional and mental levels. We learn about all of that through our bodies from when we're infants.